So let's take a look at this lovely slow string sound. Now, on your instrument, on this particular instrument here, the particular Mantovani sound is labelled as slow strings. It has that nice slow attack at the beginning of the notes, and it's that gives us that sort of nice lush Mantovani sound. It may be called something else on your keyboard or organ, but I'm sure you've got that lush, soft string sound. And what is great about the string sound on modern instruments is that, because like strings in real life, you can play it across the whole of the keyboard. Because if you think about strings, you've got cellos, so if you play deep down here, we get a nice deep cello-like sound. If we play in the middle of the keyboard, we get violas, and if we move right up to the top, we get the lovely high violin sound. So it's a very forgiving sound in that it works across the whole of the keyboard, and not every sound does. You know, obviously if you're using a trumpet or a saxophone, you have to try these days, because the sounds are so real, to remain somewhere within the region that proper instrument can play. Otherwise it does start to sound not particularly pleasant. But with strings, it's great. Let me just give you an example. I'm just going to play a little bit of Bewitched, and I'm going to swap octaves. It's almost as good as making a complete registration change. Have a listen. I'm going to start deep down here. Move to the middle of the keyboard. And go to the violins. And back down again. So, just by going from octave to octave, we've actually changed the sound and the feel of the strings. We've gone from those really nice deep cellos up to the violins there. But you may have noticed there's a little bit of phrasing involved here to get the best out of strings. And if we look at the obvious tune, Carman, Mantovani's signature tune, if you were to just read it from a book, it would be like this. Okay, there's not a lot wrong with that, but Mantovani was known as having cascading strings, and that's because the string sound all blended, all the notes used to run into each other. Now you can actually do that on the keyboard. When you play that first note, if you keep that held while you come down and then slowly release them, then it gives you that nice cascading string sound. Just have a listen again. Now have a go at that. The worst possible scenario you should be trying to achieve is not to play the next note, not to release the note you're on until you've completely played the next note. Look. That way you don't get those gaps between the notes and things start to blend. But if you can hold that top note on down that first run, it really does make those strings cascade. The other thing is, I'm sure you've all been told a million times by professionals that, you know, when you're playing instruments like clarinets, saxophone, trumpets, you know, they need to breathe. Just like the guy or the girl that's playing the instrument, they would need to take a breath occasionally. Then you should take the pause in the playing to make it authentic. Actually, the same is true of strings, because if you think of strings, what they do is they draw the bow back across the strings and then release the bow, ready to rebow again. So you do get that little gap, and it's nice to put that in. It's almost like taking a breath. Have a listen. This is without taking the breath. Okay, now to me, what's wrong with that is that there's no gaps in the music. There's what we haven't done is split it into musical phrases. You know, when you sit down to read a book or a newspaper, when you're reading something, you tend to read with expression. You don't keep your voice at the same level all the time, and when there are things like commas and full stops, you take a pause and you actually alter the tone of your voice depending on what you're reading. The same is true when you're playing. You need to be splitting that section up there into smaller sentences or smaller musical phrases, if you like. Have a listen this time. I'm going to take some pauses in the right place and have a listen to the difference it makes. Okay, I really tried to exaggerate those pauses there, but you see, it's now made it a little bit more musical because we've actually recreated what the strings do, which is to take the bow off the strings and then rebow. So again, give that some thought. If need be, just literally take a breath before you start and imagine the point where you're likely to sort of need to take a breath yourself, and often that will work then if you just sort of lift your notes off. You may have noticed at one point I actually took the chords off as well. Now that will work with an organ. Obviously if you're playing in keyboard style and using automatics, even if you lift your left hand off, the sound that you've got on for the left hand will come off, but obviously the automation, the auto back-ins, the auto bass will carry on. So I hope that's given you a little insight as to how to use the string sounds. Really try and practice that technique of blending one note into the other. Let's try a different octave. You know, you can jump about from octave to octave. Yes, again, that needs some practice because you may be used to playing a particular tune in one area, but try it somewhere else and see if it works for you. So have some fun with your Mantovani strings. We're going to swap to a totally different organ. Totally different sound on the organ for the next section. And that's the sound, the lovely lush sound of the tibia, like the gentle theatre organ. And we're going to get you starting to practice a little technique that a lot of people have always asked about, and that's called open harmony. And we'll move on to that section very soon.